Census taking in Mauritius goes back to the 18th century. In 2022, the housing and population census data have been collected by the offices of the Statistics Mauritius after exactly 11 years around the islands of Mauritius, Rodrigues and Agariga. The first complete census was realized in our country in 1735, when we were still known as Île-de-France, under the governorship of Marie de la Bourdonnais. In 1786, a decree was passed for censuses to be taken on the 1st of January on a yearly basis. The practice of taking annual censuses with the purpose to collect taxes was continued under British rules. As from 1830 to 1831, the last annual census under Île-de-France was conducted. The first census report taken in 1786 was finally printed in the year 1846. The previous ones were mainly based on administrative reports. The 1851 census included Rodrigues Island, Seychelles Archipelago, Chagos Archipelago, Agalega, Emirates Archipelago, Coativi, and the northern island of Madagascar. Censuses were administered every 10 years as from 1851 to 1931. In 1871, besides the population census, the housing census was also undertaken. Seychelles was split up from Mauritius in administration in 1891, and the census data were published separately. Around 374,000 people were enumerated in 1901 and were categorized as follows. Firstly, Europeans, white, mixed, colored. Secondly, Africans. Thirdly, Indians. And fourth, Chinese. As a result of the breakout of the Second World War in 1941, the census was postponed to 1944. The first census after the war was carried out in 1952, and the 10-yearly plan was subsequently resumed with a census taken in 1962 and another one in 1972. The population listed was around 550,000. Mauritius led the first census in 1972 after gaining its independence in 1968. The process was administered in two rounds, namely the housing census and the population census. In contrast with 1952 census, the population was double and reached 1 million inhabitants. For the first time in our history, the number of women exceeded that of men in our country. Microcomputers were used for the first time by Statistics Mauritius in 1990 in order to process data. Our country crossed a milestone by attaining a population of 1,056,660 inhabitants. Statistics Mauritius made use of the scanning technology in 2011 for the first time to capture census data. Census data were collected on tablets. Through this digital census, Statistics Mauritius goes green, as there was no need to print some 800,000 questionnaires.
Statistics Mauritius was created in 1945 mainly to collect and disseminate data to be used for policy making. Whatever statistics that is being collected by Statistics Mauritius, it is being used by policymakers, civil society, researchers, students, and all these statistics helps in decision making, policy making, informed decision, whatever the use. Statistics Mauritius collects a variety of data from different sources. But what are these sources? We have administrative data, that is those data that already exist within ministries and departments. Secondly, we have data that we collect on our own, that is from surveys or censuses, like just we collected data for the housing and population census data for 2022. Once data collection has been completed at Statistics Mauritius, we do some editing, processing to produce final tabulations. Now, these are published in different forms. We have our economic and social indicators on different subject matters that are published on our website. We have hard copies of this publication as well. We have analytical reports. In addition, there are many researchers who are looking for microdata. We release these microdata, but which have already been anonymized for use by researchers, academia, etc., international organizations for further analysis or research.
A census is the biggest statistical exercise that a country can undertake. It's in fact the total process of planning, collecting, compiling, evaluating, disseminating and analyzing statistical data pertaining to all units in a population. Two key points to remember here. That process refers to a specific time and to a well-delimited part of a country. A census provides data at the lowest geographical level, the only source where we can have data at the lowest geographical level. Census provide information for policy development and planning, very important for the prospect of a country. Census provides statistical frame for surveys. We have surveys carried out by statistical offices, by Statistics Mauritius, and we need a frame for the conduct of any surveys that is conducted by Statistics Mauritius. We need a frame, and that frame, it is sourced from the census. As regards the 2022 Housing and Population Census of Mauritius, we covered the island of Mauritius, island of Rodrigues, and island of Agalega. The census has been taken in two rounds. First, the housing census, followed by the population census. And for the population census, we had a reference point. That reference point that we call the census night. And it was the night of 3 to 4 July 2022. The census night is used as a reference. It's midnight of the 3 to 4 July 2022. The census, in a sense, it's taking a snapshot of the whole population. It's taking the snapshot of the present population and the resident population of the Republic of Mauritius. Once we have obtained data from the census, Statistics Mauritius will produce indicators two main indicators has been produced and the release has been fixed for the 18th of November 2022. After that, we'll have more reports. We'll have table reports. We'll have table reports on the housing and living conditions. We'll have reports on demographic and fertility characteristics. We'll have reports on educational characteristics, disability characteristics, economic characteristics, geographical and migration characteristics, and household characteristics, among others. After that, we'll have more reports that will be produced by researchers. Data will be provided to users, to researchers, and we need to make maximum use of data on census.
The difference between Census 2011 and Census 2022 is that in Census 2022, we have used copy technology, compared to Census 2011, where we use paper to collect data. So once the data is collected on tablets on the field, the data is synchronized directly to the server at the office. So there is no need to scan the data or do data entry because the data goes directly to the server from the tablet. Census 2022 has been conducted in line with the UN principles and recommendations for the housing and population census, which recommend that we use tablets for data collection. Once the data comes to the server, we then need to process the data. That is, we do coding, we do imputation if required, and then we do analysis and report writing. One of the advantages of digital census is that processing goes faster, so that we get results faster.
This is the first digital housing census using computer-assisted personal interviews technology, whereby tablets were used as an instrument to record answers from respondents. In 2022, a total of 329,000 buildings, 411,700 housing units were enumerated in the Republic of Mauritius. Out of these 329,000 buildings, the majority, that is 85.2%, were categorized as wholly residential buildings. It is also worth noting that the increase in the stock of buildings by 70,500 or 5.6% from 2011 to 2022 was mainly due to the increase in the number of wholly residential buildings, partly offset by decreases in non-residential and partly residential buildings. The number of housing units grew by 14.7% from 359,000 in 2011 to 411,700 in 2022. 84.5% of the housing units were categorized as principal residence, 1.5% of them as secondary residence, and the remaining 14.0% were vacant ones. Private households increased by 7.8% from 342,360 in 2011 to 369,000 in 2022. Housing and living conditions improved from 2011 to 2022 with higher proportions of households owning the houses from 88.8% to 90.4%, having access to electricity from 99.5% to 99.6%, with piped water inside the house from 94.3% to 96.4%. From 2011 to 2022, access to internet has more than doubled from 31.7% to 75.0%. From 2011 to 2022, an increase was noted in the proportion of private ownership of housing units from 99.1% to 99.4%. ICT use and access has become vital in households, especially with online educational programs and work from home, which have become very popular with the restrictions on movement due to COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and 2021. In 2022, the proportion of households having mobile phone was 92.6%, up from 88.2% in 2011. Computer was 47.0%, up from 37.6% in 2011, and internet was 75.0%, up from 31.7% in 2011. Among the storied buildings, the number of buildings with more than one story grew even faster by 61.9% during the same period. Separate buildings, that is, buildings made up of only one housing unit, dominate among residential and partly residential buildings and comprised around 77.8% of such buildings. In contrast, the share of high-density housing units, that is, semi-detached houses comprising two housing units and block of flats comprising 3 or more housing units, has decreased from 16.3% to 15.5% during the 2011 and 22 period. People tend to build their houses using concrete, resulting in an increase in the share of this type of building from 92.0% to 94.8% in 2022. The stock of houses made of iron, tin, walls and roof is declining in terms of absolute numbers, that is from 12,600 in 2011 to 7,500 in 2022. In 2022, 90.4% of households own the housing unit they occupied, compared to 88.8% in 2011. This resulted in the reduction in the proportion of private households who rented the houses from 8.0% to 6.5%. Compared to 2011, the average monthly rent for housing nearly doubled in 2022, from 4,400 rupees to 8,200 rupees. In 2022, liquefied petroleum gas still remains the most common type of fuel used for cooking by households. Nearly all, 99.2% households use LPG as the principal type of cooking fuel, as compared to 97.7% in 2011. On the other hand, the use of wood and charcoal decreased from 1.9% to 0.2%. (2022) Population Census. The resident population of the Republic of Mauritius, enumerated at the 2022 Population Census, was 1,235,260, of whom 1,101,280 lived in Mauritius. Overall, there were 627,170 women and 608,090 men, with women outnumbering men by almost 19,080 in the Republic of Mauritius. There were 97 men for every 100 women. The average household size went down from 3.5 to 3.3. The literacy rate went up from 90.1% to 91.9%. The level of education of the population improved. The proportion of people who studied up to tertiary level increased from 3.8% to 8.8%. The number of employed persons increased from 522,200 to 539,200. Portris district is still top in the list, receiving the highest number of commuters, 64,600 daily in 2022 against 66,800 in 2011, ahead of Plain Williams. The proportion of people with disabilities rose from 4.8% to 6.8%. Creole remains the most common language from 2011 to 2022. The percentage of people speaking Creole increased marginally from 89.8% to 90.0%. In 2022, the three most common groups of occupation held by persons with tertiary education were professionals, 47%, technicians, associates professionals, 21%, and managers, 15%.
I would like to thank personally the staff of Statistics Mauritius, namely the census team, and field staff from other ministries and departments for the conduct of the housing and population census. In addition, I would like to thank different institutions involved in the successful completion of the exercise, namely the Ministry of Finance to provide adequate funds for the conduct of this exercise, the UNFPA and UNECA for the technical assistance provided, and the Kenya Bureau of Statistics for lending us tablets to collect data required for the Housing and Population Census 2022.